Title: The HOA Tyrant vs. the Homeowner, a War Over Water. I was sipping my iced tea by my private pool, enjoying the peaceful afternoon, when I noticed a group of HOA board members casually wading into my backyard like they owned the place. Leading the charge? Karen Whitmore, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA. That's when I heard the words that made my blood boil. This pool belongs to the community now. For a second, I thought she was joking. Maybe some weird HOA-themed prank. But no. Karen stood there, arms crossed, wearing that smug expression she always had when she made up rules out of thin air. The board members behind her nodded like programmed puppets. Before I could even process what was happening, one of them took off their shoes and stepped into my pool. I shot up from my chair. "Excuse me." Karen gave me the kind of look you'd give a toddler throwing a tantrum. "This pool," she gestured grandly, "is now a shared community amenity. The board voted last night. Since it's external to your house, it falls under HOA governance. Congratulations. You've just increased neighborhood value." Value? I nearly choked on my drink. "You can't be serious." She smiled in that condescending way only a true HOA tyrant could. "Oh, I'm very serious. And as a courtesy, we'll be adding it to the HOA's list of shared resources in this month's newsletter. We've already posted an announcement on the community Facebook page." I didn't even let her finish. "No, absolutely not. This is my private property." Karen raised an eyebrow, looking around theatrically. "Well, that's debatable. You see, according to the HOA bylaws, anything visible from the street." I cut her off. "My pool is behind a fence. It's not visible from anywhere except my own yard." She waved a dismissive hand. "Technicalities." I turned to the board members behind her. "Are you all okay with this? You're seriously going to try and steal my property?" A few of them shifted uncomfortably, but Karen's glare kept them in line. One of them, a guy named Bob, coughed and said, "The board voted unanimously." Yeah, I bet they did. Probably with Karen standing over them like a dictator. Before I could respond, two kids ran through the gate, my locked gate, which was mysteriously open, and cannonballed straight into my pool. Their parents followed behind them, making themselves comfortable on my patio furniture. I turned back to Karen, completely dumbfounded. She smiled again. "Looks like the neighborhood loves their new pool. You should feel honored." The rage I felt at that moment was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. Deep breath. Calm down. Think. I wasn't about to let some overreaching HOA president waltz in and declare my hard-earned luxury community property like some medieval warlord seizing land. I needed to shut this down. Fast. First things first. I pulled out my phone and called the non-emergency police line. Trespassing laws were clear, and as long as I had the right paperwork, they'd back me up. While I was on hold, Karen continued her little speech, already moving on to scheduling pool maintenance and setting up community swim hours. This woman had lost her mind. As I waited for the police dispatcher, I walked into my house, straight to my property documents. Framed. Hanging in my home office. I took a picture, zooming in on the clearly marked private property lines that explicitly stated my house, land, and pool were not under HOA jurisdiction. When I came back outside, the situation had gotten worse. More people had arrived. Neighbors, kids, complete strangers, all acting like my backyard was some kind of public resort. Someone had even set up a barbecue grill. I spotted a man pouring himself a drink from the outdoor mini-fridge attached to my patio kitchen. That was it. I snapped. I walked straight to Karen, holding up my phone. "I'm on the phone with the police. Every single person here is trespassing. If you and your little HOA crew don't leave now, you'll be explaining this to an officer." She scoffed. "Oh, please. The HOA has every right to manage shared neighborhood assets." I smirked. "That's funny, because I just checked my deed, and this property is 100% not under HOA control." For the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed Karen's face. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. She recovered quickly. "Well, we'll see about that. The HOA has the authority to amend policies as needed." That's when the police dispatcher finally picked up. Loudly and clearly, I stated, "Hello, yes, I need officers at my address immediately. A group of people are trespassing on my property, and I have the legal documents to prove it. Some have broken into my gated backyard, and others are using my private pool without consent." The reaction was instant. Some neighbors bolted out of the pool like they had just seen a shark. Parents grabbed their kids. Even Bob, Karen's loyal follower, mumbled something about needing to check on his dog before walking off. Karen, however, stood her ground. "You're overreacting," she snapped. "You're the one making this into a big deal. No one's hurting anything." I pointed to the grill that someone had dragged onto my lawn. "Yeah? Tell me more about how my property isn't being damaged." She pursed her lips, but didn't budge. "You're being ridiculous. No one else has ever had a problem with community access before." I laughed, an actual, disbelieving laugh. "That's because no one else is stupid enough to try and steal someone's private pool." Before she could reply, the distinct sound of a police siren echoed from down the street. Karen visibly tensed. The last few remaining trespassers quickly packed up their stuff, muttering apologies as they left. The moment the first officer stepped onto my driveway, Karen's entire demeanor changed. And that's when I knew I had her. The moment the police officer stepped out of his cruiser, the tension in the air shifted. Karen, for the first time, looked nervous. "Ma'am, we received a call about trespassing. Can you explain why you and these people are on this property?" Karen immediately switched to her fake innocent voice. "Oh, officer, there must be a misunderstanding. This pool is a community asset, as declared by the HOA board. We're simply here to ensure its proper use." The officer turned to me. "Sir, do you have proof of ownership?" I handed him my property deed. "As you can see," I said, "this land, house, and pool are not part of the HOA's jurisdiction. I have never signed any agreements allowing them to claim it. This is private property. These people are trespassing." The officer examined the documents, nodded, and then turned back to Karen. "Ma'am," he said, "this property is not under HOA governance. You and anyone else here without permission are trespassing. That's a crime." Karen's face blanched. But that's just a technicality. We voted." "You can't vote to steal someone's property, ma'am." The moment those words left his mouth, I swear I saw Karen's eye twitch. The officer turned to the few remaining board members. "I'm going to give you one chance to leave quietly. If you stay, you will be removed and possibly charged." Bob, Karen's most loyal lackey, immediately bailed. "Sorry, Karen. I just remembered I left my stove on." One by one, the other board members made their exit. Karen was furious. "You cowards. You're all spineless. We're supposed to stand together." The officer crossed his arms. "Ma'am, do I need to escort you off the property?" Karen huffed, snatched her clipboard, and stormed away. But not before delivering her final warning. "This isn't over. You just made an enemy of the HOA." I grinned. "Oh, trust me. That was already the case." She stomped off down the street, muttering obscenities under her breath. The officer sighed and turned back to me. "Sir, if they try this again, call us immediately. I'll be filing a report on this incident." I nodded. "Thanks, officer. Believe me, this won't be the last time." And I was right, because Karen wasn't done yet. For a few days, things were quiet. Too quiet. Then, out of nowhere, I started receiving HOA fines. Lots of them. The first one? $500 for improper pool maintenance. The second? $750 for an unapproved fence. The third? $1,200 for violating community aesthetics. I laughed. Actually laughed. They were really trying to punish me. I took a deep breath and sent one simple email to the HOA. "Hello, as previously discussed, my property is not under HOA jurisdiction. Any attempts to fine me are legally invalid. Any further harassment will be met with legal action. Have a great day." Then I attached a copy of my property deed for good measure. I figured that would be the end of it. I was wrong, because the next morning, Karen called a tow truck to remove my car from my driveway. I was in the middle of my morning coffee when I heard clanking outside. I stepped onto my porch and saw a tow truck driver hooking chains onto my car. Karen was standing there, arms crossed, smiling. I marched over. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Karen smirked. "Your vehicle is in violation of HOA parking policy. It's being removed." I laughed out loud. "I'm not under HOA rules, Karen. You can't tow my car." She held up a forged violation notice. "Actually, I can. According to Section 14B. I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Hey, buddy." I called to the tow truck driver. "Did she tell you this car belongs to a police officer and that you're about to commit grand theft auto. The driver froze. Karen's smug expression vanished. You're bluffing. I flipped open my badge wallet. Karen's face turned ghostly white. The tow truck driver immediately unhooked my car. I am out, he stammered. I didn't sign up for this. He jumped back into his truck and peeled out of there as his life depended on it. I turned back to Karen, still recording. You just attempted to steal a police officer's vehicle. She panicked. I didn't know. I grinned. Well, that's too bad. Because now, I have evidence. Karen took one step back, then another. Then she ran. I laughed the entire time. But I wasn't done yet. I called my precinct commander. Hey, boss. You're not going to believe this one. The next morning, 2 uniformed officers showed up at Karen's house. Jake stood on his porch, coffee in hand, watching the chaos unfold. Karen answered the door, and the officers immediately served her a legal notice. Mrs. Whitmore, you are being formally investigated for filing fraudulent complaints, harassment, and attempted vehicle theft. We need you to come with us for questioning. Karen's scream could probably be heard from 3 blocks away. By the time the officers escorted her to the squad car, half the neighborhood had come outside to watch. And just like that, the reign of terror was over. A week later, the HOA board held an emergency vote. Karen? Banned from ever holding a position again. Her fines? Reversed. Her allies? Turned on her instantly. And Karen? She moved out less than a month later. I'd like to say I felt bad for her. But honestly, I had never enjoyed a swim in my pool more in my life.